Yeah, it's white guy with beards time for the evening. Maybe we can get these guys to come up here because they fit the. Nice to meet you,
Yeah,
by the
nice
way.
to meet you too.
Well, you know, those of you who have bared with us this long, it's good of you to stick around. Christian Frock, the curator, said like, "Oh, don't prepare at all. You know, it's totally extemporaneous." And so I kind of did that. You know, didn't prepare that much. And I met Wes when we were sitting over here waiting, and I told him, "Oh, did you prepare?" And he's like, "No." But then you went and like scribbled a whole bunch of notes and that sort of thing. So you might be ahead of me here. So Wes, you work for Pitch Interactive, and maybe just tell these people what that is.
So this
Or
is
you're the
what's
founder,
interesting.
excuse me.
Yes. So we are a data visualization studio based in Oakland. And my joke I was going to say at the end of this, I'll just say it now because it'll wake us up a little bit too, is that Oakland is really dangerous. Okay, don't move over there. That's my civic duty to keep the rents down in Oakland. So I have to say that every time I come over to San Francisco. It's not always so bad. And I love Oakland. I've been there for 4 years. We're a data visualization studio, and what we do is we work with data. We work with technology. We work with data, but there's a lot of passion and drive behind what we do. So we do personal projects, and I'll talk a little bit about this project here to give this sort of background. We visualize a piece showing all drone strikes in Pakistan that the CIA has conducted. And the background of that story is that every year and a half or so at the studio, we push away client work and we do work for ourselves. The work that we did before this is we did a visual comparison showing the linguistic comparisons between the Holy Bible, the King James Version, and the Quran at a time of like deep Islamophobia in this country. And so a lot of work that we do, we sort of look at what our policies are doing, what our governments are doing, especially to foreign lands, and how we're understanding other cultures that we in the media or we as a public society might see as a threat. And it makes me sort of, what I want to do is I want to question that idea. I actually grew up in the South. I grew up in Arkansas, of all places. And I grew up with this sort of formula that was always sort of fed to me, you know, play football, be a doctor. And I couldn't help but fight that all the time and question that, like, I don't want to play football. I want to ride a skateboard, you know, or I want to break laws and I want to do crazy shit and feel alive. And it even got to the point where I moved to Europe and I moved to Croatia when NATO was bombing Serbia, and I lived there for 3 years, sort of self-inflicting poverty upon myself, just because there was something about the effect of war on civilians, and especially from like greater powers, when there's very little empathy towards other populations that we don't see. They're literally out of sight, out of mind for us. And in what we're doing, and actually what wars are actually doing to other populations. So in 2012, John Brennan, who was the director of the CIA, came out in front of Congress declaring that drone strikes that we're conducting in Pakistan are morally right, they're constitutional. I don't know how he came into that. They're wise, surgically precise. We're only getting the terrorists Star Trek time. It's like laser focus. We're only getting the bad guys. And everyone was kind of cool with that because he said it. Not many people were asking questions, but then suddenly this independent study came out that was conducted by Stanford and NYU on the effects of drone strikes on civilians in northern Pakistan. It came out and it basically was showing that drone strikes are horrible for civilians. People were not sending their kids to school. Some of the drone strikes, one of them in particular in October of 2004, hit a school and killed 69 children. And the way that the US media spun it was that, oh, this was like a training camp for terrorists, and it was actually just a normal school. But it was a way that our media was able to spin it out of, and whether that was like government involvement, who knows? The CIA doesn't release very much of their data. But we were able to show that, and what we did was, it's a form of data dramatization. So we visualize data, but we can also dramatize it. And I think it's perfectly legitimate given the context of the actual data that we're showing. And what we really wanted to do with this was just to kind of show people, give a time span and sort of an animated representation of the strikes, how they've been carried out, how actually under Obama did exactly what he promised. He said he would increase technology in warfare, decrease soldiers, and it's exactly what he did. And he also increased a lot of the drone strikes that has been and still is going on. And we wanted to sort of showcase this data and give people a sense of how much we know, how much we don't know. There's a lot of gray. These are the alleged military combatants, it's any male between the ages of 14 and 40. There's just a lot of controversial information about it. And when we actually released this piece, it just took storm. Like, I actually had a nervous breakdown that first week because we had no press kit. The Economist picked it up. The Guardian picked it up. It was on Iranian news, on Pakistani news. Swedish documentary filmmakers were contacting us. We want to use this. We made everything open source. We just gave it out. Our logo, our name, logo, we don't put that anywhere on there. It's on, like, way deep down in the info if you want to find out who made it. But it wasn't really a self-promotional piece as much as it is a piece that we make under the philosophy that if you do the work that you love and you're passionate about it and you do something you believe and you bring that out, people will pay you to do more of that kind of work. That's how they'll identify you. And it's always making time to do something that you're passionate about. I think that's really important. You know, we have mouths to feed and whatnot. Especially when you're running a studio with engineers and technologists, it's crazy expensive, but it's always making time to make sure that we're doing stuff that's passionate for us and that we believe in so that we can sleep.
It was a long answer, but we got a lot of information. Let me ask you something. So as someone who works with data too, although not, I think, at the depth you do, what do you want me to do? Like, when I see that piece, what do you want me to do with that experience?
I think the goal was to be aware. You know, I think self-awareness or awareness in general is key. It's information that you're sharing. And the real goal with that piece, the sort of success story, if there is one for us, was that we brought light onto a subject that everyone was sort of, oh, we've been told that it's fine, and they're drones, it's technology, it's unmanned, like US soldiers aren't dying, so we must be doing good, you know? And I think it's the reality of looking at the piece and sort of, a lot of times when I show this piece, you hear that sort of gasp when there's that growth. Right after, it's not just because Obama was sworn into office, it's also because Musharraf resigned. He pushed the CIA back on a lot of drone strikes. He had some clout in DC. His predecessor did not. But it was Obama taking office, and there's this big part, and it's just about, holy shit, you know, I had no idea that this was happening to this scale. And I think that's the most important part, and also making it somewhat interactive and where you can look at it. You know, you can explore it a little bit and get a sense, a visual sense too, that you can retain in your memory, and then you can go off and share that information with other people. And I think it served that fairly well.
Is it a potential further goal to have awareness lead to action?
I think yes. That's a really good question because that first week that I mentioned when I had a nervous breakdown, we actually had people like knocking on our door. We were in Berkeley at the time, now we're in downtown Oakland, but we literally had people like activists, because it's Berkeley, you know, knocking on our door, come join us and do this. But I think it's honestly, what I want to do is drive people emotionally enough to figure out what can they do about it, or to be able to discuss it and have it, you know, sort of counter what the media is saying or what politicians are saying, is that drone strikes are good, they're surgically precise, but actually have just more people in a general audience or society saying, no, like, I'm questioning that. And what we actually saw, and it's interesting, right after it was launched, for the first half, I think, of 2014, there were no drone strikes in Pakistan at all. And I don't know if it was because of this piece. We had millions and millions of viewers, but it is that sort of curiosity. Did this create that pause? And then after that, you've seen much more precise, like you don't see any more women or children or civilians being killed since then. And my hope is maybe we had some sort of impact on that, even if it was a little.
With our last couple seconds here, one thing that I wrestle with is there's a kind of sense of, I don't know, objectivity about data, and then, at least for me, there's this need to aestheticize it in some way. I have to bring an aesthetic dimension to it so that it becomes more. And I feel guilty about that because I feel like, am I mitigating that objectivity because I'm adding something of myself in there? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think our brains I study a lot of like neurology and neuroscience. Our brains are wired to process visual information so much better than processing numbers and charts. And so I think that's a really important, we are in an era where a modern paintbrush is code. And I embrace that idea, is that we can use code and technology to create art. That's important. I think it's using art to an advantage of communicating something, because art it's been around for so long, and it has this like, certain forms of art have such a strong visual way of communicating emotion, and it's like, how do we communicate emotion with information and get people to understand a really complex problem better, so that we're better informed as we walk about the world and vote and do those kinds of things.
So maybe with emotion and information, that's a good way to end it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.